Hey everyone, it's Ryan from Flourish Practice. With the year ending, I always think it's really good and productive to take some sort of inventory on yourself, on your work, on your relationships. And so I'll be doing that now, reflecting on really the first year of Flourish. Flourish was started in December of 2023 after I was faced with a professional crossroads. I had accumulated a lot of really cool experiences up to that point. I'd always wanted to start my own business and kind of drive my own change in the mental health and wellness industry. And I had half baked ideas for many years when I was younger. I didn't really have the skills really either to put them into practice. But for how it played out, December of last year made the most sense for me to jump into this new endeavor. It's definitely been a up and down experience. I think anyone that starts a business knows that it's a intellectual and emotional ride, among a lot of other things. So it's really important to check in and show some gratitude for the person that you are right now compared to maybe the person a year ago when you started this journey, not just a company or a business, but a new year of life. And we are usually going to be very different versions of ourselves one year to the next. And I know sometimes it might feel that the years start to cluster together and we start to feel like the same person, and that's okay. I think every year, though, there is something distinct that you could point to and say, I really added this to my perspective. I really added this to my skill set. Or I was really introduced to this new concept and this came up really vividly for me throughout the year. In reflecting on this year, entrepreneurship was really one of the few lenses that I hadn't seen the behavioral health industry from. Now, what do I mean by that? I was introduced to the behavioral health industry when I was 15 years old. I was enthralled with schizophrenia research in high school. I took a really cool elective course where I got to pick an area of scientific study and dove into it with a really cool teacher and a really awesome class. And I actually got to volunteer on an inpatient unit for 2 summers in a row and got to work with people with schizophrenia as well as I was doing all this awesome research. So I was thrown into this academic world of psychology early on, and it was very booky and very empirically based, and about definitions and categories in the DSM. And so my first lens into the field of mental health was through this clinical psychology textbook academic lens. And then, of course, this led into undergrad. And as many of us know with undergrad psychology, I think they really have 2 main tracks, which is one is academic, where you follow along the research path, where the goal of the academic track really is to work with a mentor that aligns with your research interests and contribute to the growing body of publications that are out there, and then work on staff, faculty on in a university, major university system, with a department that aligns with your interests. So it's very, kind of within a structure and research focused. Then there's the other track of psychology that we find in the undergrad world, where it might trend more towards the clinical, gearing you up for masters of social work programs. There are definitely bachelors of social work programs, masters in counseling programs, and a more of a clinical bend. And there's also kind of the public health lens on psychology as well. But all in all, how we're brought psychology and mental health from the early days are the textbook definitions, the DSM, the research, also the modalities and the clinical applications of it. And you see that kind of schism happen in the university system. And I was no different. And part of my university experience, it was really down the middle. I loved the research. I worked with some really awesome professors. I got published. I presented at conferences. I loved research and the structure that it required. I also loved clinical. I'd also loved modalities of therapy and the creativeness that would come with a style to a certain therapist. I remember going to therapy in college, and our university had free 10 free sessions at the University Counseling Center. And I just wanted to take them just to kind of talk to the therapist about their modality. I just kind of wanted to pick their brains on their jobs, which in retrospect was not super healthy and probably pointed to something else that was going on for me at the time. But I really wanted to, immerse myself both in the academic subject matter and also the clinical experience. And as you kind of went through that, though, as I was going to come out of undergrad, I always just started to think, well, how can this grow? How can we apply these values, these principles, these skills that psychology, the practice teaches you, the science, what it teaches you? There's such a bigger lesson and a bigger driver and purpose behind learning about yourself and learning about other people and how to talk to other people. I really, truly believed when I was a sophomore or junior that empathy is the key to unlocking everything in this world. And I think there is still some really big truth in that empathy and treating people with kindness and love above all else can end so much of this corruption and war and conflict that we constantly see in our society, regardless of geographic region, regardless of time, regardless of what you look like. Really, it's about empathizing with another living thing in front of you that you may have similar experiences with or not, but at least the practice of empathizing and working to understand this person across from you, one person at a time, was super, super important to me and was really my North Star, probably in the middle of my college experience of thinking, regardless if it is research and I get my PhD, regardless if it is a therapeutic clinical therapist route that I take, or if it's something else, I understand that human to human connection and empathy is my North Star. And that's the greatest purpose I think any of us can have, is how to improve our lives and the lives of others around us deeply and truly. So after undergrad, I then, took a couple weeks in a master's of counseling program. I dropped out after 2 weeks. I was not sold on it. I was kind of bored in the classes. I didn't like it at all. And I got a full-time job offer around this time as well to work in a supportive housing program in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And this would be my first job out of college and in my field. And I took that and I thought to myself, why would I pay to get another degree when I could go into the field, get awesome experience, and get paid to do that? And if I wanted to get a PhD down the road, that would be awesome. But just getting that experience and getting paid for it just seemed so obvious to me. And so then I dove into the community mental health world for about 2.5, 3 years there. And that was just such an eye-opener of how big the gaps in our system are, how individuals who live paycheck to paycheck with SSDI, who live with serious mental illness in these public, housing programs. It was an eye opener, and it was something that it wasn't like I was shocked, but it was just really an illuminating moment of, wow, this mental health model that I learned all about really applies in a very small way to a very small group of people, and there needs to be this societal shift in priorities, because there are so many people being left behind, and the structure of how you tie housing to mental health performance and this kind of chicken or the egg. Housing first was a great model that I learned about at the time, but really individuals' housing was dependent on this lottery system. It was dependent on their symptom management. It was dependent on a lot of things. And I understood why there was a level of, acuity in their cases, how that could determine where they lived. But at the same time, you had individuals fearing for their lives, fearing for their housing situations, fearing for their future based on how well or how they couldn't manage their mental illness or the things that were coming up for them. And typically the most stressful times, individuals would, crack under the pressure of, say, for example, someone who lived in one of these housing programs, middle-aged person who's been in the system for many, many years, has a lot of Axis 1 diagnoses, and they have an opportunity to move into an independent housing program. They've been great. They've been med compliant. They have gone to programs. They may have a full-time job, or a part-time job, I should say. They might explore education, get a GED. They're doing everything that they can from the position that they are in to follow the rules of this public mental health model. Now, all of this could lead to a symptom relapse. It could lead to decompensation. It could lead to a lot of things. And that would jeopardize everything for this person who maybe had this illness onset for them in their early 20s. They maybe had some episodes throughout their 20s into their 30s, maybe, but got their shit together into their 30s, 40s, now maybe into their 50s. And their past record has been held against them their entire lives. They've worked for the better part of a decade to improve their standing and do the things that they were told to do. And now to get some independence, to get some autonomy, to get a living situation that is better for them, that is now in jeopardy because of a week or a day of some symptom, decompensation, which happens to not just people with serious mental illness, happens to everybody. We all have our shitty weeks. We all have our weeks where we're feeling the pressure and we feel it a little disproportionately. And so I just felt it was so much unfair pressure on these individuals who already had been super marginalized and had their past held against them for many, many years. And to hold them and look at them with a magnifying glass week over week, there was a lot of beauty and love in that program and the programs I worked in. There was a lot of growth and a lot of just messy processing, which I will always love. But I zoomed out looking at the system saying, like, this is such an inhumane, unfair set of circumstances for these individuals who at the start were given such a horrible hand with their trauma and their socioeconomics and everything else that goes with that. So all that to say, public mental health showed me quite a bit about the industry. It showed me quite a bit about myself, which I am eternally grateful for. It showed me that I wanted to go into business. It showed me that in this industry, in this country, I should say, that having an administrative skill set, having management financial skill sets, having the ability to understand an organization, a company, and make decisions and know how that affects the bottom line, I think is probably the preeminent skill set to have in a Western capitalist society, is to go to grad school to get a business education if you need one. Some people may not because they have business education through other areas of life. But for me at that time, a clinical psychology kid, didn't know really anything about business. I said, I want to get an MBA. And that seemed very different and unique, but something about it felt really right to me. And so